Chapter 1. You are listening at FameTV.info. Huiyao is a famous flower of kaolin in an aristocratic family. Countless women wanted to climb his bed, but in the end they all fell into disgrace and came to a miserable end. Its heart is cruel, the degree of spicy hand, let a person point. After all the bed-climbing failures, the famous women who love and hate resent that Huiyao, a dog man, deserves to pay attention to orphans all his life, and there is no successor. Occasionally, Huiyao just sniffed at the rumors and said, "No successor. Tut, I need kids like that. It's a waste of money to keep such a burden on children." Of course, as soon as he spoke, his handsome face was full of inhumane indifference. In this age of profit supremacy, if the little guy is useful, maybe he can keep a commercial marriage. Listen. What do you mean? This crazy dog man has even his own children. Even planned to have a child later to fight for their own interests, commercial marriage. It's not human. At that time, the President Hua, who was annotating orphans and no successor in their mouth, was cold at this time when he received a message suspected to be a prank. Ding! Your daughter has been delivered, please remember to sign for the Maeda. The ripple of the small wave makes the man who has always been expressionless cold, and his face is rarely cracked. Daughter. What daughter? He's going to have a daughter. Make fun of. Huiyao's lips hook, staring at the text message for a few seconds, and finally cold face, without hesitation, chose to delete, thinking it was some kind of neuropathy's prank. As a matter of fact, no matter who encounters this kind of thing, they will not take it into consideration. Who would have taken a message seriously? He went on working on the rest of the papers with a sneer. About half an hour passed after the SMS was deleted. In his office, Huiyao suddenly heard a slight knock on the door. The man looked at the document with his head down, and his eyelids were too lazy to lift it. He spat out a word. In. Huiyao thought it was an assistant or someone from the company who wanted to find him. As a result, he waited for a long time and there was no news. The man could not bear to frown, raised his head and repeated coldly, "Come in." The tone was fierce enough to frighten a child to cry. After the voice dropped, people outside the door slowly pushed the door open, and finally there was movement. Baba. The little guy put his head out of his head quietly. After seeing the man, the cat's eyes lit up slightly. He grabbed the villain father's 1.8-meter long leg tightly. There was a sudden silence around. Huiyao was frightened by her father to take the document, hand slightly shaking, "Pa," to a sound, all the paper scattered on the ground. At this time, however, men have no time to take care of the documents. Huiyao frowned slightly and put down the folder in his hand without expression. He looked down at the small dot that suddenly appeared in front of him. His eyebrow beat and he squeezed out a few words from his teeth. Loose, hands. In front of her, the little Tuanzi, holding her thigh, looked like a 5-year-old. She was wrapped in a white and fluffy dress. She covered most of her face with a snow-colored hood. She looked down and couldn't see how she looked. She had a little milk dog in her arms, soft, almost integrated with the color of snow. No, the little guy hugged his thigh, his face was buried in his hood, and his white and soft face puffed up slightly, and he said a word bravely. If you don't let it go, you don't let it go. Let Baba go. Before they left, the grandfathers said that only by holding their father's thighs can they reach the peak of life. Xiaoisang tilted his head and thought. She thought the grandfathers were right. Huiyao's jaw curve was tight, and he looked at the little guy suddenly with a cold eye. His face was extremely gloomy. The little girl's face was covered more than half, and her hood fell down naturally when she looked up. A head of curly black hair and waist, slightly cocked on the head of the small hair, 2 pairs of ancient tassels droop, dimples sweet, it is almost people's heart. It doesn't look like nobody wants it. Huiyao glared at the little guy holding his thigh. His face was frosty, and his forehead was blue. He could not bear to say, I don't have a daughter as big as you. Let him go. No, the girl's voice was so soft that she couldn't speak clearly. The little milk dog behind her struggled to jump out of her arms, wagging its tail and following the little guy behind her. One big and one small, white fluffy. Normal people just look at it and it makes people's hearts melt. Unfortunately, Huiyao is not a normal person. This is an inhuman and ruthless villain in the novel. Can you expect him to be soft-hearted to a little steamed bun that you have never met? How could it be? Somewhat emotional villain glared at her, mercilessly pulled people down, tone impatient. Get out, I don't say the second time. Sonoratia parvifolia. She blinked her cat's eyes blankly and looked up at him with her little head up. What's Dad talking about? Huiyao gnashing his teeth. I let you go. Whose bear kid is running out of here? Sang, with her head tilted blankly, imitated a man's voice and repeated. Roll, she dragged her breast cavity. I won't say it for the second time, Huiyao. I won't say it for the second time. She is soft and sticky to pick up the man's long legs, small head crooked, milk. Dad said good, don't say the second time. The man's face suddenly overcast, a look of rain and rain. This can bring Zhao Tezu, who came in to deliver materials nearby, with his eyelids jumping. He had no doubt that as long as the little girl spoke a little more, Mr. Huo would not hesitate to take her collar and throw it out to let Yi Sang know what folk suffering is. Zhao Ti's legs trembled, and he looked at Xiaoisang in a daze. Where are these children from? Horizontal trough. Are parents crazy? Dare to send the children to their president's office, not afraid to come in vertically and go out horizontally. The information you need, President. In order to prevent Huiyao from slapping the little guy to death, Zhao Tizhu, on the other side, rushed forward to hand over the information, and resolved the laughing and embarrassing confrontation between father and daughter. Huiyao rubbed his eyebrows, picked up the little girl's collar in one hand, and without pity, he sent Yi Sang to Zhao Ti's arms. Take her to the police station and get someone to claim it. He sneered and said, did you learn to touch porcelain at a young age? I can't go to heaven when I grow up. When Yi Sang Tun refused to accept Zhao Ti's help, he put his head out of his arms. The cat's pupils widened and he roared back, Mulberry didn't touch porcelain. That has no lethality. Small milk sound, let the human heart melt simply. Muda's emotional bully always hears his speech and laughs. There is no softening on his face. He squints his long eyes, and his voice is cold, little fart boy, do you dare to roar at me? www.milovnovel.com, the fastest update of the web novel. Listen to the full novel at FameTV.info, direct link in the description.